that wanted me to set up all sorts of stuff. Okay, so here's the, all right, we can see, there we go. All right, can you hear us?
What's that?
Can you hear us okay?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, well, I don't have the questions in front of me because I have to hold my phone. So, fire away.
Okay, so why don't, maybe we should start with a little bit about you and where you're from, and you can tell us a little bit about the reservation, and then we can go from there.
Sure. I was born and raised on the Navajo reservation, which is the largest reservation in the United States. So I refer to myself as Dene. A lot of people will ask me, well, how do you like to be called, what do you like to be called? Native American, Native, Indigenous. I prefer to be called Dene. That is the Navajo way of saying Navajo. In a more generalized term, Indigenous, Native is fine. I never refer to myself as Native American. So, like I said, I was born and raised on the reservation. My entire family still lives there. My mom, dad, aunts, uncles, most of my siblings as well, nieces, nephews. I am Tuchini on my mother's side. That means red running through the water clan, and Ashini, which is salt clan on my dad's side. The Navajos, and I can't speak for other tribes, only when I'm referring to natives or indigenous peoples, I can only speak for what I know, which is my tribe. We have an extensive clan system. So not only do we have our biological family members, we have our clan family as well. So I will continue to carry the Tuchini clan with me. So my kids, my biological children will be Tuchini, and they'll always have their dad's clan as a secondary clan. It's a matrilineal society, so we carry on our mother's side. And so when you identify yourself to another Dene on the reservation or Navajo on the reservation, we always identify ourselves by clan as well. So that is, it gives the other person a sense of place in regards to the reservation and a sense of who you're connected to on the reservation. I attended public school on our reservation. Since ours is the largest reservation in the United States, we have several different school systems. We have public school system, we have BIA, which is Bureau of Indian Affairs system, which is most of the kids are bused from their native communities and then they stay in a boarding school. And then we have, then you have your schools that are run by churches. We have every denomination on the reservation. So, but my entire childhood and schoolhood, I went through a public school system. I graduated from my hometown high school, which is also the Chieftains. So I guess we share that in common, the same mascot. Like I said, I grew up on the reservation. We're very land-based, so grew up knowing how to hunt, grew up learning about different plants and their medicinal values. The ceremony was very an intricate part of my childhood when I was very young, and then my parents converted to Christianity. So at that point, we no longer practice our traditional practices. And so that was a bit of an adjustment, as well as I think played into a lot of my insecurities as I got older and became a teenager and started high school. And so you can ask me about that later. But like I said, my siblings still live on the reservation. A couple of them work. I have an older sister who's a year older than me who doesn't work, unfortunately. She just kind of lives on the streets in my small hometown, which is called Shiprock, New Mexico. We're almost in the Four Corners area of New Mexico. So it's probably the second largest town on the reservation. And by town, I just mean has a grocery store. It now has McDonald's. There's a Taco Bell, several gas stations. So nothing. It's not a huge city or a huge town. But just population-wise, it's centrally located on the reservation. So we have running water, electricity, and so forth.
Okay, cool.
Where some towns don't.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, Kayla, read number 2. Yeah, hang on.
Number 2.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, number 2.
Okay. How did people feel about you leaving the reservation? Did you still go back to visit?
Yeah, was that how do I feel? How did I feel about leaving the reservation?
How did other people feel about you leaving the reservation?
That was the question?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hi. How did other people feel about you leaving?
Oh, how did other people feel about me?
Yeah, and like when did you leave and what was the feeling around that?
Well, so I actually, I was pregnant my senior year of high school, and I'd always done very well in school. I'm the youngest in my family, so I'm the youngest of 7. And so I was pregnant my senior year of high school, and my daughter's dad, who is now deceased, wasn't from my reservation. He's not native. So he joined the Army, and so upon graduation, we moved to his first duty station. My parents, nobody was, there was no sense of, disownment or betrayal, from any of my family members. They just realized that was the best situation for my daughter and, of course, for myself. And so there was, I didn't have any type of, there's no resentment in regards to me leaving. So I was 18 by the time he was done with basic training, and we moved to his first duty station. So leaving wasn't that big of an issue. I realized you've all read Sherman Alexi's, one of his first books. So I can understand how that might seem kind of common in regards to some of the sentiments that his tribe expressed toward him. But in my situation, there was no animosity or any type of resentment. However, I can kind of talk about growing up and my town is a border town, so the next town, the nearest town to us is 30 minutes away, and that's a non-native town, so it's not on the reservation, and it's predominantly Caucasian. Well, when I was growing up, it was predominantly Caucasian. To give you some context, growing up in that particular area, it was Navajo people and Caucasian people. That's it. There were very few African Americans in that area. Very few Hispanics in that area. Believe it or not, the only African American person I knew happened to be our girls' basketball coach. And like the book, in the book, I think Sherman Alexie takes note of the fact that the school has a housing area for teachers to come and teach on the reservation. So that was the same. That's the same type of situation in my town. So, however, the houses were very nice compared to what we live in currently, even. So they were government-built houses, homes, in very nice areas. Had grass. They were the only houses on the reservation who had grass and had yards. a front yard, a dedicated front yard. So, and they had non-native individuals come and teach at our school, Caucasian mostly, and that one individual, Mr. Richardson, he's now deceased as well, the only African American in our town. So no real animosity or negativity in regards to me leaving. But however, I can tell you when kids did transfer to the non-native schools, they were at times, maybe, I have never really had any personal experience with any of my friends going to the off-reservation school. I can tell you on the other basketball teams, when you had a native playing on those teams, there was some animosity from our town or from some of the students at our school. And yeah, I think they kind of, had feelings of that they thought they were better than us. But personally, I, never held those types of, that perspective or that attitude.
Thank you. Let's do another question.
Now, currently, though, I think it's completely different because the Navajo population has increased so much. We've just infiltrated. Well, if that's the term, that's appropriate. All of the school systems there, non-native schools and on reservation schools, and a lot of natives have moved into the border town just for jobs. They're on the reservation. There are very few jobs, and there's, I believe, the statistics right now. There's nobody on the reservation who makes over the poverty limit that's set by the government. So it's a very rough situation.
Yeah. Owen, you wanna here? Owen, come on down here. I'm gonna ask another question. Go ahead. Can you see it? There you go.
What was the best and worst thing about living on the reservation?
The best and worst thing. Let me say first, I would not change my childhood. I wouldn't change a thing. The best thing, being connected to the land, knowing that I was a part of something bigger than just myself. And knowing that that ultimately it's about relationships and the relationships I have with the land and the relationships I have with my family, and that above all else, that was what was important. So, I got that from my mom and from my family members. The worst thing about living on the reservation, I think, is seeing just what the effects of colonization and the effects of the dehumanization that happens to Native people, and how that just is physically evident by alcoholism, the poverty, the lack of self-worth. I've seen it my entire life, and I've always had this unique ability to recognize things, even as a young child, when things are not good or when things are not right. So from the age of 5, my parents were alcoholics. Like I said, they were very traditional. Growing up, my grandfather was a medicine man on my mom's side, and my great grandfather on my father's side was also a medicine man. So we believed very much in native ways, and both supernatural and just the physical. So we were very involved in ceremony, but at the same time, my parents drank a lot. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. She worked, and my dad, he, what you would term, I guess, a functioning alcoholic now. He went to work 5 days a week. He worked for the tribal utility company. But on weekends, and when people paid, they would go off the reservation. There's no alcohol allowed on the reservation, so they would drive to the nearest town, and there were bars. If you ever have been to Las Vegas or familiar with the Las Vegas Strip, just casino after casino, that's pretty much what it looks like, the road leading out of our town, which is bar after bar. And just nothing nice, just ugly little shanty type shack bars and natives laying outside in front of them, drunk. That particular road, eventually all those bars were shut down. We had a lot of activists in our community who moved to get those bars shut down because the death rate was so high in that particular area. Natives would walk in the middle of the road drunk and be hit by cars, semi-trucks. It was an alarming rate each month, and so they're now closed, and the bars are in the biggest town next to ours. But so that's the worst part, is just seeing the hopelessness that a lot of the Native people in my town in particular. Like I said, I'm going to only speak to what I know. I don't want to make any generalizations, or I don't want you to walk away with this saying, I spoke to a Navajo person and this is the way she said. It is for all Navajos. It's not, it's my particular perspective and my own experience. So for me, that was the worst part, is just seeing that hopelessness when you have so many people who have so many talents and so much to offer, their families and the community, and so much more. It could help so many people.
What
So that's the best and worst.
Thank you. We talked yesterday for a second about our mascot, and I didn't know you were the. Can you hear me, Joyce? I think you have a delay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked a little bit yesterday about the chieftain mascot. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you feel about Native American mascots?
Like I said, I find it ironic that we both share the same mascot. I understand you are the chieftains as well, and in my hometown in particular, we have two Native mascots. We have our junior high schools, the Warriors, and our high schools, the Chieftains. And you can talk to a number of Natives, and they will argue for it, passionately, and then you talk to a whole other group and they will just argue against it passionately. My perspective and my opinion is, without really understanding, and you have to know, I'm fortunate because I'm an individual who has gone off, like I said, I left the reservation when I was 18. I do go back, I didn't answer that part. I do go back every several months. So I for a while there was every other month. I would go back, drive home or fly home. And I am fortunate enough to be in a situation where I can afford to do that. Most Natives don't, but I do. I do try to get home to my parents as much as possible. They are, in their 70s, nearing 80s. And my sister as well. We have a very close connection. Well, so to answer this question, I have, I have a Bachelor's of Arts in Social Behavioral Sciences. I graduated from Cal State Monterey Bay. I went on to get a master's degree in early childhood special education. And then I then went on to a teaching program where I got a teaching credential to be a special education teacher, as well as a teaching credential to be a general education teacher. And then I entered my doctorate program. Soon after that, I finished my program. I'm all but dissertation. And if you'd like to ask me what that means later on, or why I haven't taken that last step, I'd love to answer that question. But so understanding that, I've been very privileged in the sense that I've had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of literature and Native professors. So I think that skews my opinion and perspective in regards to Native mascots, and it allows me to see both sides, I think, through a very special lens. So I vehemently stand against Native mascots. And if it comes down to protesting in my hometown, and taking up some type of grassroots stance as members of my community have, in eliminating Native mascots on our reservation, I am all for it. And the reason I say I'm all for it is I myself grew up with a very little self-worth. I was very ashamed of who I was. And I had to ask myself as an adult, why was that? Why was I so ashamed or embarrassed of who I was and where I came from? And what I realize now is when my parents stopped practicing our traditional ways and stopped being connected and then switched to Christianity, and mind you, this is nothing against any religion, it's just my personal experience. And my grandfather became a pastor. My brother is now a pastor in a Pentecostal church. So they had to just disavow, in a sense, every aspect of who we were as Native people. So I was left to completely unsure of who I was, and that made me very unsure and insecure as a teenage girl growing up. And on top of all that, you have media's images of what's perfect, what's the standard. And at the time, as a teenager, 90210 was the big show. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but and Tori Spelling and all of these, Caucasian actresses and teens individuals who were playing teenagers, that was the standard in my mind. So I would look at them and look where I came from and thought, okay, something has to be wrong with me. And I looked, my parents loved Westerns, and natives in those movies were always the savages. And, and I would look at those shows and think, well, that's not us. It's just not us. I said, why don't they talk about, how communal we are, how we come together and share food and farm together and, and celebrate ceremony together. None of that was ever portrayed in any of, media or in the entertainment industry's depiction of Native people. So I think that attributed to a lot of my feelings of inferiority or feeling less than. I, didn't see myself in anything outside of my community. And so I internalized that as being bad. And I think those mascots definitely play a huge part in that. I think it dehumanizes who we are as a people because there's no accurate portrayal of who we are. Most of those mascots are cartoonish, big noses, red in the face. Whereas Native people, we all look different. If we're talking about, I think there's over 350 tribes all over, indigenous groups all over the world, and we're all different. And to try to minimize who we are, and in other words, tell others who we are or tell us who we're supposed to be, I think is wrong. And like I said, I think that perspective comes from having, the access and the opportunity of a higher education and realizing and being able to reflect on my childhood and my background and realize that a lot of this, self-hatred that Navajo people or, people in my community have for themselves is, historical trauma. And so I can see how other Native people may take it as a sense of pride that, the Washington Redskins are, they're honoring you, they're honoring who you are as, as nations. But I that, they've not once set foot in our communities. You know, I think at the height of the Washington controversy, you know, I think the owner dedicated, you know, building materials or something to our reservation, but nothing ever comes to fruition in that regard, and there's no real sense of connectedness or a real relationship established. So I'm just not for it, and we'll have, did I lose you?
Yeah, we're still here, but there you are.
Yeah, my dog tried calling, I'm sorry. I should have told him, no calls, but they're in California. I'm in Memphis, by the way, so we're helping a friend fix up a house, so they're in California, so it's pretty early for them still. But so it's a discussion that I think that needs to be had, and I think at the end of the day, I can't convince you. I realize you have a writing assignment and you have to support your position with research. But I would, at the end of the day, ask yourself, you know, if your child, if all they saw that, you know, about themselves and their culture and their land was put into a cartoon type of form and didn't accurately depict, you know, the relationship and the significance of land and community and ceremony, any of those cartoons, is that what you want your children to think is real? And you may have brothers and sisters. You know, I teach. I this past year I taught sixth grade, and most of my students don't understand or realize that Native people still exist and that I'm Native. Because I don't wear buckskin, or I don't have a headdress on, or, you know, okay, sorry. So it's and I think the media and those mascots play a big part of that. Just, you know, dehumanizing who we are.
Yeah. So they're gonna call you on another phone
Now
instead.
they're texting them.
Oh, they're gonna text you. That's awesome. So we had a couple more questions here, and you can, whichever one you'd like to go with. We had some questions about Christopher Columbus or celebrating Thanksgiving, or has there ever been a time where you've been personally stereotyped or racially discriminated against? Whichever one you'd like to talk about, it's up to you.
You know, the Christopher Columbus, I'll touch on each of them. You know, growing up, it was funny, I like I said, in my entire high school experience, we had non-native teachers. So we always learned the history about Christopher Columbus and how he discovered America, and why he termed, you know, why we're referred to as Indians, and, you know, that whole mix up. But we never had the Native perspective. And like I said, you know, I didn't see myself in a lot of the history books, especially when we were, you know, talking about U.S. history. There was never, now, and I realize there was never an accurate description or accurate representation of Native people in the history of the United States. I don't teach my students about Christopher Columbus. It's not part of California curriculum. In that regard, I do teach them, you know, history, but then I do give them both perspectives. And I always, you know, preface my opinion based on my own personal experience, and I tell them that it is my opinion only, and it's completely subjective. So in regard to Thanksgiving, when that day comes around, I get it off. You know, I'm a teacher, so I have it off here in California. You know, we get together as a family, and it's a time for, and most of our family is off, so we just get together and we celebrate each other. And you know, every day should be a day of Thanksgiving in my mind. And so you know, there's no real regard to to Christopher Columbus and the significance of that particular day in my household, and even on the reservation. My parents, turkey is not a part of our diet, although it's delicious. So most families, we butcher sheep. We eat a lot of mutton. Growing up, we raised cattle, sheep, goats, chickens, geese. My parents had horses, so we were fortunate in that way. I guess those were our cultural assets. We were rich in that way. So we had land. Like I said, we farmed. So we butcher a sheep on special occasions and get together family-wise and just celebrate being together. If it was the entire family, we butcher a cow. And so it feeds multiple families for a very long time. So every day is a day of Thanksgiving, I think, and we're always very grateful for being able, for just being, here and having a long life. And ultimately, that's in Navajo philosophy. That's the goal of our lives, is to live a long life, which in turn means you've lived a good life. That all around you are good-hearted, you're kind, and you do right. And so, Christopher Columbus, Thanksgiving. Have I ever been personally discriminated against? Yeah, I think there's very few people. I think, each of you, and I don't want to, make an assumption that you're all just, caution. I'm sure each of you, have connections to a place. But I'm sure each of you at some point in your life have experienced some type of hurt. I think at the end of the day, that's just what discrimination comes down to. Someone, I've been hurt plenty of times. I can remember from a very young age, like I said, the town next to us was about 30 minutes away, and that was the town where we did most of our shopping. And so we would go off once a month. My dad would get paid bi-weekly. One check was always for bills, and then the second check was for food. And we'd drive off to the next town, pile in the pickup, and in those days you could ride in the bed of a truck. And we would drive to Farmington, New Mexico, and we'd go shopping. And I always, like I said, from a young age, always knew that that there was a difference. And people looked at us differently. And at that time, that town was very, we were segregated in the sense that town was predominantly white. So we go into she called again. I remember one time in particular, my parents were shopping, and my brothers and sisters and I, the toy aisle was a big deal. This was before Toys R Us or even Target. They had a Walmart, but and it wasn't. We usually didn't go there.